Parents broke into my house while I wasn't there, gave it to my brother, and lied to cop. Imagine coming home after a relaxing weekend away, only to discover that your own parents had broken into your house, given it to your brother, and then lied to the police about it. Sounds unbelievable, right? Well, this is exactly what happened to Sarah. Let's dive into her jaw-dropping story. Sarah had been living independently in the house she had bought with her hard-earned money. She was proud of her achievement, enjoying her life and the peace of mind that came with having her own space. One weekend, she decided to take a short trip, confident that her house would be just as she left it when she returned. But when she pulled up to her driveway after the trip, something felt off immediately. Her key didn't fit the lock. Confused and slightly panicked, she knocked on the door, only to hear familiar voices inside. The door suddenly opened, revealing her brother standing there. Shocked and speechless, Sarah couldn't believe what she was seeing. How did he get into her house? As she stepped inside, the confusion turned into outrage. Sitting calmly in her living room were her parents. Without hesitation, they announced that they had given her house to her brother while she was away. Sarah was stunned. Her house, the one she worked so hard for, was no longer hers, and it was taken from her by the people she trusted the most. The sense of betrayal was overwhelming. Furious, Sarah demanded answers. How could her parents do something like this? They tried to brush it off, saying it was for the family and that her brother needed the house more than she did. But Sarah wasn't having it. She called the police, certain that the law would be on her side. When the police arrived, Sarah explained the situation, but her parents did something she never expected. They lied to the cops. They claimed that Sarah had agreed to let them stay there, twisting the story to make her look unreasonable. It was a blatant lie. The police, caught in a tricky situation, couldn't immediately determine who was telling the truth, leaving Sarah feeling helpless in her own home. She couldn't believe that her own parents had not only betrayed her, but also tried to manipulate the authorities. The situation quickly spiraled into a tense family dispute, with Sarah realizing that her relationship with her parents and brother might never be the same. Sarah's story is a powerful reminder of how trust can be broken, even by those closest to you. The emotional toll of this betrayal was immense, leaving Sarah questioning not just her family's actions, but the value of the trust she once had in them. How would you handle such a situation if your own family turned against you? Let me know in the comments, and as always, thanks for tuning into today's story. Stay strong, stay smart, and always protect what's yours. Imagine coming home after a relaxing weekend away, only to discover that your own parents had broken into your house, given it to your brother, and then lied to the police about it. Sounds unbelievable, right? Well, this is exactly what happened to Sarah, and today we're diving deep into this wild family drama. Sarah had been living in her own house for a few years, a place she had worked hard to buy with her savings. It wasn't just a house. It was a symbol of her independence, her freedom, and all the sacrifices she had made to reach that point in her life. Life was peaceful, and she had no reason to think anything could go wrong, especially when it came to family. She trusted them, but this trust was about to be shattered in the most unbelievable way. One weekend, Sarah decided to take a short trip to unwind. Before leaving, she locked up her house and left, confident that everything would be just as she had left it when she returned. Little did she know that while she was away, her parents were plotting something unimaginable. When Sarah returned home, she noticed something strange. Her key didn't fit into the lock. She tried again, nothing. Panic began to rise in her chest. Did someone break in? Was her home being robbed? She knocked on the door, but instead of silence, she heard voices inside. Familiar voices. The door suddenly swung open, and there stood her brother, casually standing in the doorway, as if he belonged there. Confused and alarmed, Sarah demanded to know what was going on. As she walked inside, her heart sank. Sitting calmly in the living room, as though nothing was wrong, were her parents. But the worst was yet to come. Without any guilt, her parents announced that while she was away, they had made a decision. They had given her house to her brother. Yes, the house she had worked years to buy was now in her brother's possession, and they acted as if this was the most natural thing in the world. Sarah was speechless, her mind racing to process what was happening. Anger, confusion, and betrayal crashed down on her all at once. How could they do this? Why would they take her house and just hand it over to her brother? Sarah demanded answers. Her parents tried to calm her down, telling her that it was for the good of the family. They explained that her brother needed the house more than she did, that he was struggling, and they just had to make sure he had a roof over his head. But none of this made sense to Sarah. It was her house. Why hadn't they asked her? Why hadn't they even told her what they were planning? The betrayal was so deep that Sarah felt like the ground had been pulled out from under her. Unable to reason with her parents, Sarah decided to call the police. She knew what they had done wasn't just wrong, it was illegal. When the police arrived, Sarah explained the situation, sure that the law would be on her side. But what happened next was another shocking twist in this nightmare. Instead of coming clean, her parents lied to the police. They calmly told the officers that Sarah had agreed to let them and her brother stay in the house. They spun an elaborate story, claiming that the house was essentially a family home and that Sarah was only upset because she didn't get her way. Sarah was floored. Here were the people who had raised her, who she had trusted all her life, standing in front of the police and lying straight to their faces. The betrayal now cut even deeper. Not only had they taken her house, but they were also trying to make it seem like she was the unreasonable one. The police, faced with conflicting stories, couldn't take immediate action. They advised Sarah to handle the matter through legal channels, leaving her feeling even more powerless in a situation that was already spiraling out of control. After the police left, Sarah confronted her parents once again. But they stuck to their story, acting as if they had done nothing wrong. Her brother, who had quietly benefited from the whole situation, said little, only further enraging Sarah. She was torn between her sense of loyalty to her family and the overwhelming anger at the injustice she had just experienced. How could they do this? How could they lie so easily, especially to someone who had always supported them? Days turned into weeks, and Sarah was left to fight a legal battle to reclaim her home. The emotional toll was heavy. She felt isolated, betrayed, and unsure if her relationship with her family would ever recover. What's worse, the legal process was slow, and it felt like every step forward was met with resistance from her own family. Sarah had to navigate this dark chapter with a sense of resolve, determined not to let her family